Chapter 1. It started with blood on her wedding dress. Rain poured in torrents, soaking through the white lace like punishment from the gods. Aria Winters gripped the hem of her tattered gown, stumbling through the muddy forest trail like a ghost fleeing her own funeral. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Not after what she'd seen in that cathedral. Her groom, Julian, her childhood sweetheart, had been caught, bare-skinned and panting, with her cousin against the altar. "You were never meant to be Luna anyway," her cousin had hissed, as Aria stood frozen in the doorway. The mating bond that should have tethered her heart to Julian's snapping like brittle glass. So she ran. No phone, no money, just betrayal and fury laced with heartbreak. She had no idea where her feet were taking her, until the scent hit her. Wild pine, burnt amber, wolf musk, and something primal, ancient. She wasn't alone anymore. Not in this forest, not in this moment, and certainly not when he stepped out from the shadows. "Are you lost, little she-wolf?" came the voice, deep and cutting like velvet steel. Aria's breath caught in her throat. There he stood, tall, impossibly broad-shouldered, and drenched from the rain like some kind of storm-born god. Midnight black hair clung to his chiseled face, his eyes, glowing silver, fixed on her with dangerous curiosity. She didn't recognize him by sight, but her wolf did. Her entire being screamed one word: Alpha. But not just any alpha. This was Caelan Thorne, billionaire, outcast, the rumored feral alpha of the rogue territory. No pack dared cross him, no council dared question him. He lived far from the rest of Wolfkind, on an estate so guarded it was more fortress than home. And now, he was looking at her like she was prey, or something worse, a mate. I didn't mean to trespass," Aria whispered, her voice raw, throat aching. "I was running, from everything." Caelan took a step closer. She flinched but didn't run. Some foolish part of her knew she should have, but another part, the deeper, aching part, wanted to stay. He tilted his head slowly. His voice was low and dark. "No one comes into my land without purpose, Aria Winters." Her heart stopped. "How do you know my name?" "I've known it since I was 17, he said, gaze burning into her soul. "The moon marked you as mine long ago." She backed up, breath trembling. No, I'm not your..." But he didn't let her finish. Caelan reached out with the same lethal grace a predator might show a cornered deer, brushing a soaked strand of hair from her cheek. "You smell like betrayal," he murmured, but underneath it, "You smell like mine." And just like that, her shattered world tilted again. Chapter 2. The silence between them crackled like the lightning overhead. Aria stood frozen beneath the canopy of pine and fury, her breath coming in ragged little clouds, as the cold sank deeper into her bones. Her dress, once delicate and white, was now soaked, streaked with mud, and clinging to her skin like a second betrayal. Caelan Thorne hadn't moved. Not really. Just that single devastating brush of his fingers against her cheek had been enough to send her instincts into disarray. The weight of his gaze, like gravity intensified, held her captive. She couldn't understand it. How could a man like him know her name? How could he possibly be speaking about her like they were destined? Her voice trembled when she finally forced it out. You must be mistaken. I already had a mate." The words sliced her own heart as she said them. "Julian and I were never fated," Caelan interrupted, voice sharper than the wind whipping around them. "You chose him, Aria. The moon didn't." "How would you know that?" she snapped, clutching the sides of her arms to stop the shaking. Part cold, part rage, part fear she didn't want to admit. Caelan's expression didn't change, but his tone turned darker. "Because if he'd been your true mate, your scent would have carried his mark by now." Aria's heart thudded. He wasn't wrong. There had never been a true mating bond with Julian. They'd loved each other, at least she thought they had, but there had never been that soul-deep, world-shattering bond others whispered about in stories. "I don't believe in the moon's fate," she whispered bitterly. "Not anymore." Caelan's silver eyes narrowed. "Then believe in this: you are on my land, in the dead of night, in a bridal dress that reeks of another male's betrayal. The wolves will smell that blood. The rogues will hunt you, and unlike me, they won't ask if you're lost." Aria flinched at the thought of being hunted, cornered, devoured. "I don't need your protection," she lied, but he only tilted his head again, wolf-like, quiet and assessing. "That's good, because I'm not offering it. That made her blink. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I'm offering you a choice," Caelan said softly. "You can walk back out into the forest, alone, in your torn dress and shattered heart, or—" He stepped closer. The air between them sizzled, charged with something electric, something old. "You come with me, to my estate. You accept my roof, my rules, my terms." "And what are those?" she asked, already dreading the answer. His voice dropped lower than ever. "You will belong to me." The Blackthorn estate, the estate was nothing like Aria expected. She'd imagined darkness, decay, cold stone walls soaked in rumors and danger. Instead, it was vast and hauntingly beautiful, hidden behind wrought iron gates, and surrounded by enchanted forest territory that pulsed with energy no ordinary wolf would dare cross. Blackthorn Manor sat on a ridge like a forgotten palace, tall windows, ancient woods, wild gardens climbing the edges like time refusing to let go. As the gates opened, the thick scent of old pine, storm-washed stone, and something warmer, like cloves and leather, wrapped around Aria. Caelan's scent. It seeped into the very soil here. The sleek black SUV they rode in came to a silent stop. "You built all this?" she asked before she could stop herself. "I inherited it," he said without looking at her, then turned it into what I needed. She didn't know what that meant. But she didn't ask. The doors opened. Rain had eased into mist now, painting the estate in fog. Servants, wolves, strong and silent, stood at a respectful distance. They didn't bow, but they acknowledged Caelan with nods that spoke volumes. Loyalty, respect, fear. "Bring her a change of clothes," Caelan told one of the women, "and prepare the guest wing." Aria's brows rose. "Guest wing? I said you'd stay under my roof. I didn't say I'd take you to my bed. Not yet." Her cheeks flamed. "You're disgusting. You'll think worse of me before this is over," Caelan said without malice, then strode ahead. Inside, the mansion was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings, velvet drapes, soft amber lighting, and ancient portraits that stared as if they knew secrets better left buried. The walls hummed with age and magic. She could feel the pulse of the estate beneath her bare feet as she stepped onto the marble. The room she was taken to was large, luxurious. A queen-sized bed, gold-threaded sheets, a fireplace already lit, warmth poured into her chilled bones. Clothes were laid out for her, soft, comfortable. A long, oversized sweater, leggings, a pair of warm socks. Aria hesitated, then finally stripped off the wedding dress and dropped it onto the floor like a memory she never wanted to pick up again. Later that night she didn't sleep. How could she? Her mind ran in loops. Julian's betrayal, the scent of her cousin's lipstick on his throat, the flash of pity in the eyes of her former packmates as she fled down the aisle alone. And now, this. Caelan Thorne. The mysterious, too-powerful alpha who watched her with the patience of a hunter and the restraint of a man barely leashed. Just when she thought the silence would eat her alive, a knock came at the door. She jumped. "Who is it?" "Caelan," came the voice. "We need to talk. I'm not dressed." "You're not human," he replied. "You're my guest, and I waited 2 hours." Her hands trembled as she opened the door. He stood there in dark jeans, a long-sleeved shirt rolled up to his elbows, the collar open, revealing the inked curve of a tattoo on his collarbone, runes and claw marks laced together. He didn't ask to come in. He simply entered and took a chair near the fireplace. Aria stood near the bed, arms crossed. "What do you want from me?" "Everything," he said simply, "but I'll settle for honesty." She swallowed. "Tell me the truth, Aria," Caelan murmured. "Why did you really come here?" "I didn't mean to come here," she shot back. "I was running away." He didn't flinch. "And what if I told you that your wolf ran toward me?" Aria's breath caught. "I don't believe in fated mates," she whispered. He leaned forward slowly. "But I do, and I've waited for you. For years. Even when I thought you would never come." She stared at him, heart slamming against her ribs. Then softly, almost too softly, "I'm broken, Caelan. Why would you want someone who's already been discarded?" His eyes never left hers. "Because even broken," he said, voice raw, "you're the only thing the moon ever gave me." Chapter 3. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows along the polished walls of the guest suite. Aria stood there in the amber glow, facing the man whose very presence seemed to reshape the air around her. Caelan Thorne, The billionaire alpha with a fortress for a home, a packless name feared across every shifter territory, and eyes that saw straight through to the shattered pieces of her soul. He had just said the words she hadn't known she needed to hear, because even broken, "You're the only thing the moon ever gave me." She wanted to scoff, to reject them, to throw the blanket of bitterness back over her aching heart. But something in the way he said it, he hadn't meant it to seduce. He hadn't meant it as a line. He had said it like a confession. Quiet, undeniable, honest. And Aria had learned something in the last 24 hours. Honesty hurts more than lies. She turned her back to him, arms hugging her sweater tighter around herself. "You shouldn't say things like that. You don't even know me." "I've felt you," Caelan replied behind her, "long before you knew my name." "You make it sound like fate," she whispered. "And fate doesn't care who it breaks." "Maybe," he said, voice low and patient. "But I do." A long silence stretched between them, the kind of silence that made people fall in love or run for their lives. "I'm not ready for this," Aria finally said. "I'm not asking you to be," Caelan answered without hesitation. "I told you, you'll live under my roof, that's all, for now." "And after that?" she asked, turning slowly to face him. He stood now, walking toward her, but not too close, always aware of her space, of her control. It surprised her how a man who radiated power could be so careful with it. "When the time comes," he said, "you'll know. And you'll choose." "You think I'll choose you?" she asked softly. His silver eyes gleamed. "No, I know your wolf will." Aria felt something stir deep inside her, that part of her that had been sleeping, numb, muted. It wasn't loud yet, but it was there. Curious, primal, awake. She hated it. "I don't want a mate," she snapped. "You don't want him as a mate," Caelan corrected. She stepped back like he'd slapped her. "You think I'm weak? I think you've been surviving for so long, you've forgotten how to want anything." And with that, he left her standing in the glow of firelight and confusion. The estate grounds. The next morning, Aria awoke in the enormous bed, the silk sheets still smelling faintly of wild pine and smoke. She hadn't dreamed. Or if she had, her mind had buried them too deep to find. The clothes laid out for her were simple: black leggings, a long-sleeved gray top, and a pair of soft boots. She dressed quickly, then stared at the mirror for a long time. The girl in the reflection wasn't the same girl who had run through the woods in a wedding dress the night before. She wasn't sure who this girl was yet, but she wanted to find out. When she stepped out of her room, the mansion was quiet, almost too quiet, until a voice came from behind her. "You shouldn't walk the halls alone." She turned to see a woman, tall, stunning, with cropped silver blonde hair and skin like warm bronze. Her eyes were sharp and watchful. Beta energy radiated from her in waves. "I'm not afraid," Aria said. "You should be," the woman replied. "Not of this place, of what it brings out in you." Aria frowned. "And what's that?" The woman's eyes flicked over her. "Your true self. The part you buried under expectations and fear." "Who are you?" "Celine. Caelan's second. I run the estate when he doesn't feel like pretending he cares about it." Charming, Aria thought. But there was no malice in Celine's words, just exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying someone else's burdens for too long. "Where is he?" Celine arched a brow. "Waiting for you." The training grounds, the estate, stretched far beyond the mansion. Aria followed Celine past the gardens and through a narrow cobbled path that opened into what looked like a private arena, stone and dirt, enclosed by wrought iron and open sky. Caelan stood in the center, shirtless, barefoot, his body a map of scars and power. Runes inked down his spine in dark ancient lines. His chest rose with calm, controlled breath. Aria stopped at the edge. "What is this?" Caelan looked up at her, eyes sharp. "A test. A test of what?" "Your wolf." Aria's body stiffened. "I told you. You haven't shifted since the betrayal," he said, stepping toward her. "I can smell it. She's locked, buried, afraid." Aria flinched. "You don't know anything about me. I know what it feels like to silence your wolf. I did it for 10 years. That stopped her cold. He looked at her then, not with arrogance but understanding. Quiet pain lingered behind his words. And something else. Loneliness. "What happened to you?" she asked before she could stop herself. He didn't answer, not with words. Instead, he stepped into the arena, shifting right in front of her eyes. The sound of bone cracking and muscle tearing filled the air, but he didn't cry out. His body exploded into movement, dark fur rippling along muscle and bone, until a massive black wolf stood in his place. Caelan's wolf, twice the size of a normal shifter, eyes the same piercing silver, and a scar down his flank that pulsed like a warning. The wolf padded closer to the edge of the arena. Then, bowed, not in submission, but invitation. Aria felt it in her chest, her ribs, her skin. Her own wolf stirred like a song under her skin. The pressure built slowly, like thunder rolling through her bones. Her legs trembled. Her pulse roared in her ears. "No," she whispered, backing away. But her wolf didn't listen. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't glorious. It was rage and ache and every memory she'd tried to bury rising up at once. Her scream became a growl. Her bones cracked. Her muscles stretched. The wind howled with her, and then her paws hit the ground. Aria stood, unsteady and raw in her wolf form, smaller than Caelan, but built for speed. Sleek, silver-white fur rippled along her back. Her eyes glowed gold. Caelan's wolf didn't move. He waited. And then slowly, carefully, he moved in a circle around her, a ritual, a claiming, a test. Aria's wolf bared her teeth. She wasn't ready to belong to anyone, and yet, when Caelan's wolf nuzzled the top of her head, she didn't pull away. She didn't have to accept. But for the first time in years, she didn't have to run. Chapter 4, They ran. Not for training, not for sport, but because the wind demanded it. The forest stretched wide beyond the Blackthorn estate, its ancient trees whispering secrets only wolves could hear. The moment Aria shifted, Caelan took off without a word, his massive black wolf moving like thunder over the ridgeline, and something in her followed. Her white paws hit the earth with powerful rhythm, her lungs filled with clean air for the first time in what felt like years. She hadn't shifted in over 6 months, not since Julian first began turning cold and her wolf had started to go silent from grief. That version of herself had curled into a ball and tried to disappear. But this was wild resurrection. She chased Caelan through the trees, dodging boulders and leaping over fallen trunks, their wolves communicating in growls and flicks of ears and instinct. For a moment, it didn't matter who she had been before. She wasn't Aria Winters, the disgraced ex-Luna-to-be. She wasn't the betrayed bride. She was just a wolf again, unleashed. And Caelan, God's Caelan. He moved like a king of shadows, a beast built for blood and dominance. Yet with her, he didn't try to outpace or overpower. He ran just ahead, guiding, testing, teasing. They broke into a clearing near a mist-covered ravine. Caelan stopped first, his fur bristling in the wind. Aria slowed, circling once before standing opposite him. Their eyes met. His wolf lowered his head in acknowledgement. Respect, not demand. Aria tilted hers slightly in response, a silent answer. Then, without warning, Caelan shifted. It happened in a single heartbeat, his enormous form twisting back into a man. Naked, bare-chested, breathing hard from the run. His dark hair clung to his forehead in damp curls. Silver eyes gleamed with something too complex to name. Aria hesitated, panting through her muzzle. The air between them shimmered with something dangerous. "I won't look away," Caelan said softly. "Not this time. Shift." She bristled, part pride, part panic. But her wolf obeyed. Bones snapped. Her body twisted in agony and light until she stood on 2 legs again, naked in the silver light, arms trembling from the effort. And for the first time in her life, someone looked at her and didn't make her feel small. Caelan didn't leer. He didn't flinch. He watched her the way a man looks at a miracle he never thought he'd be given. Reverent, quiet, still, and that silence wrapped around her like a second skin. Then he spoke. "You're stronger than you think." She crossed her arms over her chest, self-conscious. "And you're better at this than you let on." He smirked faintly, stepping forward. "There's a reason I brought you here. A reason the moon pushed you toward this land when you ran." "I didn't run to you," she said. "You didn't have to," he replied. "Your wolf did." She hated how her heart stuttered at that. Caelan pulled his shirt over his head and handed it to her without breaking eye contact. "Come back to the house. There's something you need to see." It wasn't part of the main house. Caelan led her through a side corridor, down a spiral stone staircase carved into the cliffside beneath the manor. The air grew cooler the deeper they went. Aria's skin prickled, Not from fear, but from the strange energy humming through the walls. "What is this place?" she asked, clutching his shirt tighter around her. "The heart of Blackthorn," he answered. "What the world above was built to protect." They reached a black iron door etched with runes. Caelan pressed his hand against it. The metal shimmered, then groaned open. Inside was a massive circular chamber, lit only by braziers and flickering candles. Books, maps, scrolls. Ancient blades hung in glass cases. The air buzzed with old magic. But what drew her attention wasn't any of that. It was the mural. A giant painting dominated the back wall, an image of a woman with white silver hair, burning golden eyes, and a wolf behind her that looked exactly like Aria's. Her breath caught. "What is that?" "That's you," Caelan said quietly. "Or at least, what was foretold." "I thought you didn't believe in prophecy," she murmured. "I don't," he said. "But my father did. Obsessively, he believed one day a silver wolf would come from a broken pack, one touched by betrayal, and she would either save our kind, or destroy it." Aria stared at him. "And you think that's me?" "I don't think," Caelan said. "I feel, and my wolf has been howling for you since the day I turned 17. She looked away, heart pounding. "What if I'm not her? What if I don't want to be her?" Caelan stepped closer, slow and steady. "Then you don't have to be. You can burn the mural, you can walk away. But whatever you choose, I'm still going to want you. Not because of destiny, but because you're you." And Aria broke, not in a violent way, not in a dramatic one, but quietly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her lip trembled, because someone had finally seen her beneath the betrayal, beneath the brokenness. Caelan didn't try to touch her, didn't pull her into an embrace. He simply knelt in front of her and bowed his head like a vow. And something in Aria shifted again, not her wolf, not her instincts, her heart. Later that night, the estate was cloaked in fog again. Servants moved silently, fires crackled in their hearths. But Aria couldn't sleep. She stood at the balcony of her guest room, looking out over the dark woods. Somewhere out there, Julian and her former pack were probably spinning lies about her, claiming she ran because she was unstable, damaged, weak. Let them. She was done shrinking. A soft knock came. She knew it was him before she opened the door. Caelan stood there, still dressed, though his sleeves were rolled up and his eyes were darker than usual. "I can't sleep," she said. "Neither can I." She stepped aside. He didn't speak, just walked over to the fireplace, knelt, and added more wood. The fire came alive again. She stared at his back, the way he moved, controlled, calm, dangerous. "Why are you really alone out here?" she asked suddenly. "Why no pack?" He turned, met her gaze. The truth in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. "Because the last time I trusted someone with my heart, they sold it to my enemies." Her breath hitched. "I'm not asking for yours," he said. "Not yet, but if you give it, I won't ever let go." Then, slowly, she walked toward him, and when Caelan opened his arms, Aria stepped into them like she was finally home. Chapter 5. The morning after Aria stepped into Caelan's arms, the entire estate felt different, not just to her, but to everyone. She saw it in the way the servants nodded to her now with something closer to respect than suspicion, in the way the house seemed warmer, the air less thick. Even Celine, Caelan's beta, had narrowed her eyes thoughtfully when she'd seen Aria walking beside him through the south corridor, the two of them not touching, but so attuned they didn't need to. But Aria couldn't pretend her heart wasn't at war. The bond between her and Caelan was undeniable now. Her wolf stirred every time he entered a room. Her skin prickled with awareness when he stood too close, and she caught herself staring at him far more often than she should have, studying the way he carried himself like a weapon hidden in velvet, his strength wrapped in restraint. And yet, she was still the woman who had been left at the altar, still the woman who had trusted the wrong alpha, still the woman who didn't know what she would do if Caelan ever turned on her. That fear wasn't gone. It was just quieter in his presence. "You should know what we're up against," Caelan said the next day, leading her into the war room, an underground chamber just beneath the east wing of the estate. It wasn't what she expected. This wasn't some cold, sterile room filled with monitors and control panels. No, this space was carved from old stone and reinforced with iron and ancient charms. Maps were spread across a massive oak table, shifter territories outlined in silver ink, Red markers indicated threats, blue, allies, and black? The black pieces were scattered far too close to her former pack's borders. Aria's stomach twisted. What are those? Independent rogues, Caelan said, pulling out a chair for her. And mercenaries, paid to do dirty work. Some of them are just ferals, others hired by Alpha Gregor. She froze. My old Alpha? Caelan nodded. Your ex's father. Julian may have betrayed you, but it was Gregor who orchestrated it. Aria sat slowly, her hands curling into fists. Why would he do that? Caelan paced behind her, restless energy pouring off his body. Because of your lineage. You're not just some forgotten she-wolf, Aria. You're from the Dawnfang bloodline. She blinked. That's just an old name in our family tree. It's not just an old name, Caelan cut in. Your maternal grandmother, Aria Dawnfang, was the last true seer of the North. Your blood carries more than just a name, it carries power. Aria's pulse thundered in her ears. I'm not a seer. Maybe not yet, he said softly. But Gregor believes your wolf is dormant because you've been suppressed. He thought he could bind you to his son, use the mating bond to control whatever gifts might awaken in you. She stood abruptly. So he arranged the mating, the betrayal. Caelan looked up at her, eyes hard. Julian was never going to love you. He was a pawn, one that outplayed himself. Aria felt sick. The weight of that betrayal redefined everything. I would have spent my whole life as a prisoner, she whispered. And I thought I was freeing myself when I ran. You did, Caelan said. Because the moon doesn't abandon her daughters. She guides them, eventually, to where they were always meant to be. Their eyes locked. Something shifted again between them. Trust, no longer tentative. Later that evening, they sat by the fire in the manor's east drawing room. Aria curled up in a high-backed leather chair with a cup of tea, her legs tucked beneath her. Caelan sat across from her, his gaze lost in the flames. Tell me what happened to you, she said softly. Why you live alone, why you trust no one. He didn't answer right away, but then he began. My father was the last alpha of the Blackthorn line. Before me, he wasn't a kind man, but he believed in loyalty. He thought his enemies were everywhere, so he turned our estate into a fortress. I grew up in rooms without laughter. Every bond was a weapon waiting to be used. Aria listened quietly, sensing the pain underneath each word. I was promised to a she-wolf named Alira. She was cunning, beautiful. She made me believe I was safe with her, that she'd stand beside me when I inherited the estate. She betrayed you? Aria asked. She sold the coordinates of our estate to the Ashfang rebels, wolves who wanted to eradicate all pure-blood alphas. They slaughtered half the estate before we stopped them. Aria gasped. I lost my younger brother. My father died days later from his wounds. And Alira? She disappeared into the woods before the fighting even began. Aria set her tea aside and crossed the space between them. She knelt in front of him, mirroring what he had done for her that first night. I'm sorry, she whispered. No one should have to survive that. I didn't survive it, Caelan said. Not the part of me that loved. Her hand rose slowly to cup the side of his face. He leaned into her palm, not like a man desperate for comfort, but like a wolf accepting the one touch that didn't hurt. They were still sitting there, in the quiet glow of firelight, when Celine knocked and entered with a sealed scroll in her hand. Aria looked up. Celine's face was grim. This arrived for Aria, she said. A formal summons. Aria took the scroll. Her heart began racing the moment she saw the wax seal. The crest of Alpha Gregor. She broke the seal with shaking fingers and read, Aria Winters, formerly of the Riverfang Pack. You are hereby ordered to return to your territory to stand trial for treason and desertion. Should you refuse, a blood claim will be placed on your head, and any who shelter you will be marked as enemies of the pack. Signed, Alpha Gregor, Council notified. Aria felt the heat drain from her limbs. He's going to mark me for death. Caelan took the scroll from her gently and read it. His face didn't change, but his energy did. His alpha aura surged like a hurricane dammed behind ice. They won't touch you, he said, voice low and lethal. I don't want you going to war for me, she whispered. You've lost too much already. You're not a war, Caelan said. You're the reason I fight. And in that moment Aria realized something terrifying. She was no longer a victim of betrayal. She was no longer a girl with a broken bond. She was the reason a feared alpha might burn down a territory just to keep her safe. And she wasn't afraid. She was finally ready to fight back. Chapter 6. The following days passed in a tense, surreal blur. The estate had shifted from a place of quiet isolation into a fortress buzzing with preparations. Caelan's wolves, once invisible and scattered, now patrolled the land in pairs. Weapons were checked, old wards reactivated, hidden tunnels unsealed and reinforced. But amidst all the military tension, Aria Winters stood in a sun-soaked courtyard, panting, bruised and covered in dirt. Again, Celine barked, tossing a wooden training staff at her feet. Aria groaned, pressing a hand to her ribs. "Can we take a break that's longer than 3 seconds?" Celine tilted her head, arms crossed. "Did you take a break when you ran from your ex-fiancé through half the cursed forest in a wedding dress?" Aria gave her a glare. "That was adrenaline. This is discipline," Celine snapped. "And if you want to survive Alpha Gregor's blood summons, you'll need both." Aria picked up the staff with a grunt and squared off again. She was exhausted. She'd trained with Celine for 4 days now, at dawn, at dusk. Every bruise told a story of how unprepared she'd been to defend herself, physically, magically, even emotionally. But something else lived in those bruises too. Strength, growth, fury, and a sharp rising need to never be anyone's pawn again. Celine lunged first, sweeping the staff low. Aria jumped, pivoted, spun, and struck toward her ribs. Celine caught it and shoved her back with brutal force. "You hesitate," she snapped. "You ask for permission to fight. You apologize in every move." "I'm trying." "Stop trying," Celine said. "Start remembering. You're a Dawnfang. That name should terrify your enemies." Aria's breath caught. She gripped the staff harder, and without warning, she struck, fast, sharp, furious. She feinted right, then cracked the staff into Celine's shoulder. The beta grunted, then grinned. Finally. That night, after she'd soaked her sore muscles in the steaming baths of the manor's east wing, Aria wandered out to the upper terrace. The moon hung huge and full in the sky. Not a blood moon, not yet. But soon, Caelan was already there, leaning against the balcony rail, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened around his throat. The moonlight painted his hair silver and the sharp lines of his jaw even sharper. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "I saw the way you moved today. Celine's not easy to impress." "I'm not trying to impress anyone," Aria muttered, moving to stand beside him. "I'm trying to stay alive." He finally turned his head. "Good. Because the only thing more dangerous than being wanted by a broken alpha is being wanted by a whole one." She blinked up at him. "Are you whole, Caelan?" The air between them went still. "I'm getting there," he said quietly. "Every time you look at me like I'm more than what the world made me, I take back a piece of myself." Aria's heart skipped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, rune-inscribed pendant, a shimmering obsidian disc strung on leather cord. "What's that?" "A protector's token," he said, holding it out. "My mother gave it to my father the day she mated with him. It's carved from wolfstone, a rare mineral that reacts to blood bonds. I reforged it myself." She hesitated. "I want you to wear it," Caelan said. "Not because you're mine, not because I own you, but because if they come for you, they'll know you're not alone." Her fingers curled slowly around it. It was warm, solid, heavy with meaning. She whispered, "Why are you doing all this for me?" He looked at her for a long, long moment. Then he stepped closer. Not touching, just standing close enough for her to feel his heat. "Because you're not just a woman who was betrayed," Caelan said. "You're the only thing in my entire life that ever felt like a future." And before she could speak, before she could even decide if she wanted to speak, he leaned down slowly, achingly, and their lips brushed, soft, barely there, then gone. He pulled back, gaze unreadable. "Not yet," he said. "You're not ready. But I'll wait." Aria's whole body ached from that almost kiss. She didn't move, didn't breathe, only whispered, "What if I don't want you to wait?" Caelan's jaw clenched, his hands fisted at his sides. "I'll still wait," he said. "Because when I do claim you, it won't be under the shadow of another man's betrayal. It'll be because you wanted me with every part of you, including your wolf." 2 nights later, the estate shattered its stillness. Aria was woken by the sound of crashing glass and growls echoing down the corridor. She shot up from her bed, heart pounding, the protector's token clutched around her neck. Celine burst through the door, already shifted halfway, her eyes glowing, fangs bared. "We found a spy," she snarled. "In the West Wing." Aria grabbed her boots, heart racing. "Who?" "One of Gregor's messengers. He snuck in as a servant weeks ago." They sprinted through the halls. By the time they reached the holding cells, the air was thick with power. Caelan stood in the center of the stone chamber, shirt torn, blood on his hands. And on the ground, bound in silver, was a man Aria recognized immediately, Micah, one of Julian's closest friends. Caelan looked up. His voice was gravel. He was carrying letters, encoded, about your schedule, your location, your weaknesses. Aria stepped closer. "What were you going to do with that information?" Micah spat at her feet. "Deliver you, like you were always meant to be. You were never supposed to end up with him." Caelan's entire body rippled with alpha fury, but Aria stepped forward before he could. She looked Micah in the eye, and for the first time since she'd arrived at Blackthorn, her voice didn't shake. "You will deliver a message," she said coldly. "Tell Gregor if he wants me, he can come and try." Then she turned to Caelan and said, "For all to hear, but he'll find I don't run anymore. Not when I've finally remembered how to fight." Chapter 7. It rained the next morning. Not a downpour, just a gentle, steady curtain of silver that kissed the forest and painted the Blackthorn estate in a fog of whispers, the kind of rain that made the world feel hushed, as if the moon herself were holding her breath. Aria stood at the glass doors of the eastern training wing, watching the droplets trail down the panes like threads of memory. Her hands were pressed to the glass, fingertips cold, breath fogging the surface. Behind her, Caelan entered silently. She felt him before she saw him. That same slow stir in her chest, that heat like lightning waiting to strike, that quiet ache that didn't hurt anymore, it simply needed. "Why do you always find me when I'm trying to be alone?" she asked softly, not turning around. "Because I know you don't really want to be," he replied just as softly. She glanced over her shoulder. He was dressed in black from throat to boots, damp from the rain. A few strands of his dark hair clung to his forehead. He looked less like an alpha, and more like something carved from storm and shadow. He crossed the room toward her, but not too close. "Celine says your training's going well," he said. "She's lying. She's incapable of lying." Aria smiled faintly. "Then I'm better than I think. You're much more than you think." She turned then, fully facing him, her fingers still curled against the glass. "I didn't come here to be more, Caelan. I came here to survive. And you will. But not just that." He stepped closer now, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. "Aria," he said gently, "there's something you need to see." He led her through a private corridor that wound through the north wing, a part of the manor she'd never seen. It was older here, quieter. The walls bore symbols she didn't recognize, claw marks carved into the stone, burn scars that refused to fade. He stopped outside a door made of dark ironwood, bound in silver. "I've never brought anyone here before," he said, "not even Celine." Aria's heart beat faster. What's inside? The part of me that's still bleeding. He pushed the door open. Inside was a small, sparse room, no windows, one fire in a stone hearth, a weapons rack in one corner, a low bed against the far wall, and in the center, an altar of obsidian. Carved into it was a wolf's head, mouth open in eternal howl. Aria stepped inside. The air was thick here, heavy, almost sacred. "What is this place?" Caelan closed the door behind them and reached for the hem of his shirt. Aria's breath caught. "What are you doing? Showing you the truth." He pulled his shirt over his head and turned. Her breath left her in a rush. Down his back, across his left shoulder blade, was a scar. Not an ordinary scar. It shimmered faintly under the firelight, twisting, ancient, etched into his skin like a brand. Aria stepped forward without thinking. She reached out, and her fingers burned the second they touched it. She gasped and snatched her hand back. "It's hot. It always is." He turned his head to look at her. "It never heals. Because it wasn't a wound, it was a curse." "A curse?" He nodded. "The day I lost my family, the day the estate was attacked, I was marked. Not by the rebels, but by someone else, someone old, someone who wanted to see the Blackthorn line burn." Aria's eyes widened. "Why?" "Because we're not just alphas," Caelan said. "We're guardians." He stepped toward the obsidian altar and placed his palm on the wolf's head. The room trembled, and suddenly, Aria felt it, a pulse, like a heartbeat, slow, ancient, alive. "What is that?" she whispered. "The heart of the moon's chosen bloodline," Caelan said. "Each alpha is bound to it. It grants strength, but it also draws enemies." She stared at him. "Why are you telling me this now?" He looked over his shoulder. "Because the scar doesn't burn unless the bond is close." She blinked. "What bond?" He turned fully to face her. His voice was barely above a breath. "You." Her knees nearly gave out. He closed the space between them slowly, deliberately. "You're more than just my mate, Aria. You're linked to this place, to me. That's why the curse is waking up again. Because the bloodline is reawakening." She swallowed. "What does that mean for me?" His fingers brushed the protector's token at her neck. "It means you have a choice. You can walk away, or you can stand beside me and we face it together." Aria's voice shook. "And if I choose to stand beside you, I'll mark you," he said, voice deepening. "Not with my teeth. Not yet. But with my blood, and once I do, you'll be part of the Blackthorn line forever." Her heart pounded. "Will it hurt?" He leaned closer, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "Yes," he murmured, "but only for a moment, and then it will ignite you." She stepped back, not because she didn't want it, but because she did. "Not yet," she said, echoing his words from before. He nodded once, eyes burning silver. "When you're ready." That night, the estate lit up with alarm. Not a rogue attack, not a war. Worse, a visitor. Aria was in the main hall when she heard Celine's voice echo from the guard post. "Caelan, Aria, you'll want to see this." She sprinted with the others, her heart already dropping into her stomach. She pushed open the great oak doors, and froze. There, on the edge of Blackthorn soil, flanked by 2 wolves from the Riverfang pack, stood a man she never thought she'd see again. Julian, tall, polished, arrogant, wearing the Riverfang crest like it still meant something. Aria's fingers curled into fists. Caelan stepped beside her, slow and menacing. His energy snapped through the air like a blade unsheathed. Julian raised his hands. "I come in peace." Aria laughed bitterly. "Peace? From the same man who watched me be sentenced to death by his father?" Julian had the audacity to look wounded. "I didn't know, I swear." "Stop lying," Caelan growled. Julian glanced at him, eyes narrowing. "So this is the alpha who's claimed what I discarded." Caelan didn't flinch, but Aria did. Because something in her wanted to rip Julian apart, not for what he had done, but for daring to speak about her like that now. She stepped forward. "No, Julian," she said coldly. "You didn't discard me. I walked away." He opened his mouth, but her eyes gleamed gold, and I chose him. A murmur went through the guards, through Celine, through Caelan. She'd said it, out loud, claimed him, not as a bond, not as a fated mate, but as a choice. Caelan's voice was velvet and venom. "You have 30 seconds to leave, Julian, before I stop pretending to be polite." Julian hesitated. Then wisely he stepped back. But as he turned, he looked at Aria once more. "You've made your choice. Don't forget that when the blood moon comes." And then he was gone. Later, after the tension had faded and the guards returned to their posts, Aria sat in Caelan's study, alone, until he entered. "You didn't have to defend me," he said softly. She looked up. "I didn't do it for you." He arched a brow. "I did it for me," she continued, "because I'm done letting men speak about me like I'm an object." He nodded slowly. "Then it's time." "For what?" He stepped forward, and this time he didn't stop. He reached for her hand, pulled her gently to her feet, and brought her palm to his chest. His heart beat beneath her touch. He brought her hand to his lips. To begin what the moon already started. Chapter 8. The dawn of the blood moon arrived like a whisper wrapped in tension. The entire estate moved like a living, breathing thing. Quiet servants slipping through halls with linen-wrapped bundles, old scrolls unearthed from hidden rooms, guards posted at every gate. The air itself felt heavier, charged with ancient magic. Aria stood on the high balcony just off her room, watching the distant clouds part, revealing a swollen moon, tinted ever so faintly with crimson. It wasn't fully red yet. That would come at midnight. But even now, it hummed in her blood. The dawn before the blood moon was sacred, a time when wolves felt their ties to the earth and each other most profoundly. And this dawn, this particular cycle, was rare. powerful, dangerous. Tonight, the veil between fates would thin, and choices would become irreversible. "You'll need to wear this," Celine said, holding out a folded garment wrapped in black velvet. Aria took it hesitantly, opening the fabric to reveal a flowing ceremonial robe of deep silver gray, embroidered with old runes she didn't recognize. The edges shimmered faintly with threads that pulsed like wolf magic under moonlight. "What is it?" "Dawnfang bloodline robes," Celine explained. "Worn by the daughters of your line during moon-bound rites. It recognizes only the worthy." Aria ran her fingers across the delicate fabric. It felt soft as mist and heavier than iron. "I'm not sure I'm worthy," she whispered. Celine met her gaze, firm and unwavering. "You stood before your ex-mate and told him you chose your own path. You trained, you bled, you claimed a future that terrified you. You are more than worthy." Aria swallowed hard and nodded. "Where will the ritual take place?" "In the stone circle," Celine said. "Midnight. The moon will bear witness. Caelan will mark you, not as a mate, but as an alpha does a second. It's not mating, it's protection. Power, a declaration to the world. And after that, then we wait," Celine said, "because once you're marked, Gregor won't hesitate to strike." Before the ceremony, Caelan brought Aria to a hidden chamber beneath the estate's library. She didn't know what she expected, some sort of war strategy room or another armory, but what she found instead took her breath away. The room was filled with memories, paintings, scrolls, jewelry, runes carved into stone, vials of pressed herbs sealed in crystal. There were dozens of robes like the one she now wore, but none exactly like hers, and at the center of the room stood a shallow, circular pool of clear water. Caelan's voice was soft behind her. "This was built by your ancestors, not mine. The Dawnfangs kept records of their visions here by casting them into water under moonlight. Some of them were warnings, some were promises." Aria stepped toward the pool. "Why are you showing me this now?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lit 3 candles at the pool's edge, then stepped back. "Because sometimes the water shows what the soul fears most." She looked at him, brows furrowed. "Are you asking me to look?" "No," he said. "I'm asking you to remember." And as if on cue, the water began to ripple. Aria knelt before the pool. At first, she saw nothing but her reflection, her face, older than it had been weeks ago, eyes wiser, mouth firmer, hair longer. Then, the image shifted. She saw a battlefield, not one of stone and steel, but of wolves, dozens of them, tearing through a dark forest under a crimson sky. At the center of it all stood Caelan, his wolf form bloodied, panting, defending a broken shield that bore the Blackthorn crest. And next to him, a she-wolf with silver fur. She lunged forward, fangs bared, her body glowing faintly with power. But then, a shadow descended, black as pitch, shapeless, ancient, and from it came a voice, "Mark her, and she will burn for you." The water exploded outward, soaking Aria's robes. She gasped and stumbled back. Caelan caught her instantly, pulling her upright. "What did you see?" She blinked rapidly, heart hammering in her chest. "War, blood, you, me, but something else, a shadow. It said, 'If you mark me, I'll burn for you.'" Caelan's eyes darkened. "It's begun. What has?" He didn't answer. But Aria had a feeling he wasn't protecting her from the world. He was protecting the world from her. The stone circle had stood for centuries. Massive monoliths marked with claw etchings and binding runes stood beneath the rising blood moon, glowing faintly red. Candles lit the space between each stone. A bonfire blazed in the center, casting shadows that danced like spirits. Aria stood barefoot in the center of the circle, robed in silver, hair braided with iron beads, the protector's token still around her neck. Caelan approached from the far side, clad in traditional alpha black. No weapons, no crest, just his presence, towering, dominant, sacred. Celine stood as witness. 3 elders from Caelan's old line stood at the edge of the circle, their eyes ancient and unreadable. "You don't have to do this," Caelan murmured to Aria as he reached her. "I want to," she said. He studied her. "This bond is not a mate's claim. You know that." She nodded. "It will link you to my line, to my blood. If I fall, it will try to bind itself to your heart." "And if I fall?" she asked. "I'll fall with you," Caelan whispered. Then he raised his hand. A ceremonial dagger was passed to him, carved from obsidian, wrapped in dawnroot vines. It shimmered faintly under the moonlight. He turned his palm upward and sliced a thin line across it. His blood shimmered silver and red. Then he took her hand, held it gently, reverently, and cut hers too. Pain bloomed, but something deeper followed. Power. Caelan pressed their palms together. A low howl echoed from the woods. The moon turned crimson above them, and the bond ignited. Runes carved in the stone began to glow, reacting to the connection. The fire roared higher. Wind swirled. Aria felt her wolf surge up in her chest, howling to be free. Their eyes locked. And she saw it. He wasn't her salvation. He was her equal. Just as Caelan began to speak the final words of the ritual, a sound shattered the sacred quiet. A scream. Then a shudder in the earth. Celine spun on her heel, growling. "They're here." Aria's heart dropped. "What?" And from the woods beyond the circle, cloaked in shadow and blood, came a familiar voice. "Did you really think I'd let him mark you, Aria? Julian?" He stepped into the firelight, clad in blood armor, flanked by 2 Riverfang warriors and a sorceress whose eyes gleamed obsidian. "You're too late," Caelan growled, stepping in front of Aria. Julian smiled. "Am I?" Then he threw something into the fire. A crystal, black, cursed, humming with dark energy. The flames exploded. Aria was thrown back. The last thing she heard was Caelan shouting her name, and then darkness. Chapter 9. It stretched forever. It wasn't the kind of darkness Aria had known before, not the blackness of fear or betrayal or sorrow. This was ancient, cold, intentional. It wrapped around her like silk soaked in ice. She was floating, her body unmoored, her wolf howling somewhere deep in the shadows of her soul. She didn't remember the explosion, only Caelan's voice, roaring her name as fire swallowed the ritual circle. Then, nothing, no breath, no light, just him. His voice echoing even now in the hollow between consciousness and dream. "Aria, don't leave me." When she finally woke, the world was sharp. Pain stabbed through her skull, and her limbs felt like they were made of stone. She gasped, bolting upright, only to be jerked back down by iron chains wrapped tightly around her wrists and ankles. She lay on a cold marble slab, surrounded by black stone walls carved with markings she couldn't decipher. The smell of magic, ash and blood hung in the air, and across the room, seated in a tall-backed chair like a twisted prince on a throne, sat Julian. "I thought you'd sleep longer," he said casually, sipping something dark from a glass. "The impact should have knocked you out for hours." Aria didn't respond. Her lips were dry. Her throat cracked when she tried to speak. He waited anyway, watching her like a wolf watches a caged bird flap itself to death. "You look radiant," he murmured, standing slowly, all dressed up in Blackthorn's ceremonial robes. "Tell me, Aria, did you really think the moon would bless your bond with him?" She glared at him. "We completed the ritual." "Ah, but you didn't speak the final words," Julian said, circling her like a vulture. "And that means the bond isn't sealed, just tainted, hanging, unstable." Aria felt her heart lurch. Was that why her chest felt so hollow? Why her wolf was scratching at the inside of her ribs, frantic and muffled? "Where is Caelan?" she demanded hoarsely. Julian stopped walking. "He's alive, for now, but from what I hear, he's not quite himself anymore." She blinked. "What?" "Oh yes," Julian said, kneeling beside her. "The alpha of Blackthorn is on the edge of something dangerous. His mark was half forged. His bond was ripped from him mid-ritual. He felt you disappear. Do you have any idea what that does to a bonded alpha's mind?" Her breath caught. "He's feral," Julian whispered. "They've locked him in the old crypts. He's howling your name, night and day, tearing his own skin to shreds trying to reach you. The mighty, controlled alpha is nothing more than a broken beast now." "No," Aria said, shaking her head. "No, he's stronger than that." Julian's eyes narrowed. "That's the problem. He's strong because of you." He leaned in close, lips grazing her ear. "So now, I'm going to take that strength and rip it out of him." Deep beneath the Blackthorn estate, Celine stood outside the ancient crypt door, her arms folded, jaw tight. On the other side of the iron-bound gate, Caelan roared. The sound wasn't human, wasn't even fully wolf. It was a guttural, primal grief turned to fury. His hands, still bloodied, slammed against the door, claws dragging deep gashes into the iron. Runes flared around the perimeter, designed to hold him. But the warding was weakening. Celine turned to the elder on her left. "He can't hold much longer. We must sedate him." "No," she snapped. "If we drug him now and Aria returns, he might never recognize her." "You assume she will return?" Celine turned slowly, her voice sharp as ice. "She survived exile, rejection, her own blood hunting her. She will not die now." Inside the chamber, Caelan slammed his shoulder against the wall and howled. "Aria!" Celine winced, his voice cracked stone. And for the first time in 100 years, the moon circle's wards trembled. Aria didn't know how long she'd been chained. Hours? Days? Time passed strangely in the obsidian chamber. Julian visited often, never with violence, but always with purpose. He spoke in riddles, of power, of blood, of fate. He was unraveling, and he didn't even realize it. But one thing he said stuck with her. Caelan was never meant to survive the ritual. That phrase played on a loop in her mind until it unlocked something. She stared up at the stone ceiling and whispered to herself, "He was the target, not me." And suddenly her pulse skipped. The explosion, the cursed crystal, the shadow in the vision. It hadn't come for her. It had been sent to sever Caelan from the bloodline, to destroy his mind, because he wasn't just an alpha, he was the last tether to a sleeping power, and the curse etched into his back had been waiting for the moment his bond would spark, to burn him from the inside out. Her wolf surged, and for the first time since she was chained, her power awakened. The iron around her wrists glowed. Then, snapped. She collapsed forward, panting, hands trembling. Her palms glowed faintly. Her wolf had left a mark. A golden sigil spiraled over her skin like a tattoo inked by fire. She stumbled to her feet just as the door to the chamber opened. A gasp, then a shout. Julian stood in the doorway, eyes wide. Impossible. But Aria didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, slammed her palm against his chest, and sent him flying backward with a burst of energy that cracked the hallway stones. She didn't stop to see if he lived. She ran. The gates of Blackthorn were locked, but they recognized her scent before her fingers ever touched the iron. The moment she crossed the threshold, the wind changed, and in the depths of the crypts, Caelan stilled. Celine looked up sharply. He knows. The doors were unsealed instantly. Celine and 2 guards raced through the lower chambers, leading Aria to where her alpha waited. She saw him before she smelled him. Bloody. Wild. Broken. He crouched in the center of the room, shirtless, chest heaving, claws buried in the stone. The second she entered, he froze, eyes wide, and then he moved, faster than she could prepare for, but not to attack. He dropped to his knees in front of her, head bowed, voice shaking. "Aria." She stepped forward, pressed her forehead to his. "I'm here," she whispered. He shuddered, and when he looked up, his eyes were clear again. That night, after Caelan was cleaned, the wounds salved, the blood scrubbed from his skin, they sat in the quiet warmth of his private chamber. No guards, no weapons, no politics. Only them. He looked at her like she was made of stars. "You came back," he whispered. "I always was coming back, even if you hadn't. I would have found you." She smiled, hand reaching for his. "I know." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, sacred. And then he kissed her. Not soft, not slow, desperate, real, consuming. His hands framed her face. Her fingers dug into his hair. Their bond flared to life again, wrapping around them like fire and wind and the smell of rain after a drought. When they finally broke apart, breathless, she leaned her forehead against his and whispered, "You marked me with your blood. Now mark me with your heart." He pulled her into his arms and whispered against her skin, "You already own it." Chapter 10. The moon had set, the ritual had failed, and yet something far deeper had awakened. Aria wasn't a girl scorned anymore. She wasn't a pawn in a mating game, nor the broken shadow of a once betrothed she-wolf. She was a flame reborn, and tonight, the fire would finally consume everything that had tried to bury her. The air in Caelan's chambers was heavy with the scent of salt and silver pine, the mix of her skin and his, tangled in sheets that still whispered with the echo of their bond. They hadn't completed the mating ritual yet, not officially, but their souls had spoken. The kiss that sealed them in the crypts had reshaped them both, carving space in their bones for something terrifyingly permanent. The kind of permanence that made her ache in both the best and worst ways. Aria sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in one of Caelan's shirts, sleeves falling past her hands. She stared out the tall windows as golden morning light spilled into the room, brushing across her bare thighs like reverent fingers. Behind her, Caelan stirred. He didn't speak. He simply shifted closer, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin coming to rest on her shoulder. "I thought I'd dreamed you," he murmured. Aria smiled, leaning back into him. "I dreamed you too, but my dreams never smelled like you." He laughed softly, his breath a caress against her neck. "You smell like lightning." "Lightning?" He nodded, kissing just below her jaw. Like something about to burn the world down. That evening, the elders called a formal council session, not just for diplomacy, not for war, but for recognition. The Blackthorn Alpha line was being reforged, not through political alliance, but through choice, a bond not made of treaties, but of love. Celine stood before the gathered wolves, her voice sharp and sure as ever. "We stand on the brink of war, but before the first blade is raised, before a single claw is drawn, let the moon witness what is sacred." Caelan stepped into the stone ring first, this time dressed in ceremonial black armor etched in silver. He bore no weapons. He was the weapon. Then Aria emerged, robed in flowing gray and silver, but without shoes, her hair braided with iron and moonstone. Her wolf pulsed beneath her skin, vibrating with energy. She stepped into the circle, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Caelan knelt before her. "Not as Alpha, as a man, as a mate. I have ruled with strength. I have led with blood. But I kneel before you now," he said, voice low and raw, "because for the first time in my life I lead not with fear, but with love." Aria trembled. She reached out, cupping his jaw. "I was never meant to be anyone's queen," she whispered, "but you make me want to rule. Not to wear a crown, but to carry it beside you." He stood, pulling a small blade from a ceremonial pillow passed by Celine. They each cut the pad of their thumb, small, sharp, a promise. Then he held out his hand. She took it, and they pressed their thumbs together. The mate bond sealed instantly, not in silence, but with the howl of every wolf present, with the roar of the wind through the treetops, with the ground trembling beneath their feet. Aria gasped, clutching Caelan's chest as heat shot through her, lighting every nerve ending on fire. He bent, his lips brushing her ear. "You are mine, and I am yours, forever." But not everyone rejoiced. The following day, while Aria and Caelan walked the forest trails, her hand clasped in his thumb tracing circles against her palm, they were summoned urgently to the West Watchtower. Julian had returned, alone. No warriors, no army, no sorceress, just him, bleeding, bruised, on his knees at the gate. Celine barred everyone from approaching until Caelan arrived. The Alpha strode forward like a storm-given skin, Aria just behind him, her power curling visibly around her fingers. Julian looked up, eyes bloodshot. His once pristine clothes were shredded. "I'm not here to fight," he croaked. Aria stared, heart thunderous. "You kidnapped me," she said. "You tried to break the bond." He coughed, nodding. "I know, I was wrong." Caelan folded his arms. "You'll forgive me if that doesn't move me to mercy." Julian looked up, truly looked at Aria, and whispered, "You were always meant to burn, but not for me. I see that now." Caelan moved forward, ready to finish it, but Aria held up a hand. She stepped forward and stared down at the man who'd once been her promised mate. And then, softly, she spoke, "You never broke me, Julian. You never even understood me, and that's the real reason you lost." He didn't speak again. The guards dragged him away, not to be executed, to be banished. No longer a prince, no longer even Pack, just a man stripped of name and power. A man who would never forget the day the girl he threw away became a legend. That night, in the privacy of their chambers, Caelan and Aria finally stood not as Alpha and guest, not as protector and survivor, but as equals. He kissed every scar. She touched every part of him that once hid pain. They whispered truths. They made love like the world had already ended and been reborn in their image. When he buried himself inside her, it wasn't about dominance or fate. It was about belonging. Aria moaned softly, her fingers locked in his hair, her thighs wrapped tight around his hips as he moved inside her like he was trying to memorize the way her soul felt. "Say it again," she whispered. He leaned down, forehead pressed to hers. "You are mine," he growled, "and I am yours." She trembled, then smiled. "Good." Weeks later, Aria stood beside Caelan as they prepared to address the United Pax. She wore the Alpha Queen's cloak, stitched from wolf pelts, gifted by her ancestors and blessed by the moon herself. Caelan didn't speak first, she did, because this wasn't his story anymore. It was theirs. The world didn't change overnight. There were still whispers in the woods, still skirmishes on the borders of allied lands, still wolves who questioned a bond forged in chaos, not lineage. And yet, beneath the growing light of a newly risen moon, something ancient stirred with purpose. Peace didn't arrive in fanfare or fire, it arrived in steps. And Aria took the first one barefoot. Epilogue. It had been 32 days since the blood moon. And today, under the auspices of the Crescent Accord, the great Pax of the continent gathered at the neutral stone of Delmira. It was an ancient place, once the site of countless wars. Now, it bore the banners of truce. Blackthorn's banner, a silver wolf on a midnight field, snapped proudly beside it. Caelan wore full alpha regalia, silver-edged armor, a cloak made of the threads of storm clouds and steel. But all eyes weren't on him. They were on her. Aria descended the stone steps in full ceremonial dress. Moon-silver silks wrapped around her frame, braided leather cords cinching the waist. A pendant of the Dawnfang line, newly reforged, hung heavy over her heart, and upon her brow, not a crown, but a crescent moon diadem, crafted from the melted remnants of the dagger Julian once held to her throat. She had turned her pain into regalia. The council stood. Old alphas blinked in shock. Others bowed deeply. Celine, seated beside Caelan in a secondary chair, smirked like a proud sister. Caelan rose and offered his hand. Aria took it, not like a queen taking her place beside a king, but like a storm joining a mountain. "I am not here to beg for peace," Aria began, her voice calm but powerful, echoing across the marble floor, "nor to ask for recognition. My mate and I already rule a united land." Several alphas exchanged tense looks. "I am here," she continued, "to remind you that the world has changed, and we must change with it. No longer will fated mates be chained to duty. No longer will rogues be treated like vermin. No longer will women, alpha-blooded or not, be punished for surviving." She looked each alpha in the eye, and then, slowly, she said, "If you will not stand with us in building this future, then know that the wolves of Blackthorn and Dawnfang will stand alone, and the moon favors those who walk forward, not those who rot in tradition." Silence stretched like a blade, and then, an elder alpha stood, a woman with white hair and a crimson sash, voice rough like gravel but eyes gleaming with clarity. "The crescent moon favors the brave," she said, "and you, child, have made the moon proud." She lowered herself into a respectful bow. Others followed. The hall erupted into howls, not of challenge but of honor. Later that evening, long after the speeches, when the wine had been poured and politics had faded to music and murmurs, Aria stood at the edge of the reflecting pool in the east courtyard. Her fingers hovered over her stomach. She had known for days the change in scent, the subtle awareness in her body, the strange, tender energy in her wolf that curled protectively within her ribs. She was pregnant, with his child, not just a child, an heir born of two bloodlines thought extinct, a child created not from duty or dynasty, but from love. Caelan found her like he always did, without sound, with that quiet gravity that always pulled her into orbit. "You've been different," he said, arms circling her waist, lips brushing her shoulder. "Quieter, stronger." "I've been waiting for the right moment," she whispered. He turned her gently in his arms, and she placed his hand over her belly. He froze. "Aria..." She smiled. "The bond lives on, inside me." For a moment he didn't breathe. Then he pulled her so tightly against him she felt his heart break and remake itself in the same second. "We'll protect them," he whispered. "Both of them." "Both?" He drew back slightly, eyes wide. "I didn't mean to say that," but her heart skipped. She tilted her head. "You felt it, didn't you?" He nodded slowly. A quiet tremble moved through them. 2 heartbeats. In the weeks that followed, changes swept through the packs like fire through dry forest. The Alpha Code was rewritten, fated mate laws were reevaluated, a new council formed, this one with equal male and female seats, and a seat reserved for the unmated, those not born of noble lines. Rogues were no longer hunted by default, but assessed case by case. And at the heart of it all stood Aria, the first Alpha Queen in generations. She wasn't perfect, but she was respected, not because she mated the most powerful Alpha of her time, but because she survived. She changed, she chose. On the first full moon of spring, Caelan led her to the top of the northern ridge, just the 2 of them, cloaked in fur and silence. Below them, the woods shimmered in silver light. Their wolves walked beside them, unseen but present, tethered to their skin like second shadows. "I dreamed of this once," Caelan said. "Of us?" He nodded. "You were wearing less," he added with a smirk. She laughed, slapping his chest. "Of course you dreamed that." They sat together, watching the sky, his fingers linked through hers. She turned to him, eyes luminous. "Are you happy?" He kissed her hand. "Not happy, whole." And when the moon reached its highest point, her wolf rose and sang. Not in sorrow, not in rage, but in joy. The end. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Kindly comment below if you loved it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.